right, Sam. So you help analytical men make friends without overthinking.
That is
What
correct.
what does that mean?
Well, have you ever met an engineer?
Yes, I have.
How would you describe their level of understanding people, charisma, charm? How would you describe that?
I mean, I don't want to be mean and say low, but you engineers, they tend to be very dry.
hmm
Not boring, but I guess dry for lack of a better term.
Right. You've heard the classic joke of how do you know an extroverted engineer versus an introverted?
How?
The extrovert will look at your shoes instead of theirs.
That's
And,
good.
s- and so there we go. That defines the problem, right? Because I'm an engineer by training. I got my mechanical engineering degree. I've been working as an analyst for 4-ish years now. Yeah, just shy of 4 years now. So I get it. I'm there. I understand the mindset. It's not ever something talked about when you're growing up or when you're going through school or any of that. But coming out of 2020, I mean, I was slotted to go into the Air Force, but got
Mm.
medically disqualified right at the last second. Trying to find a job, trying to rebuild a social circle coming out of college. It's like I have no clue what I'm doing and I need to solve it pronto.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I love on your X handle, made 31 friends during the pandemic, so that would have been right
hmm
around 2020 as an introvert. So as an
hmm
introvert, you're an engineer, you tend to be a little bit more analytical. What was sort of the, I guess, the springboard for starting this coaching program? And it says you've helped DM me five and let's chat. I love the idea of you can start five new friendships in 5 weeks. So what does that process look like?
Yeah. So it starts with a lot of mindset shifting there. If you're not already going to the gym and you're not already realizing everything I have is a skill issue, then what I do is not going to help you. However, if you're taking that responsibility for yourself, realizing if other people figured it out, I can too. There's very little about this that I can't define for myself. That's who I'm
Mm,
looking for there because I solved it. I solved my own gym issues. I solved my own social issues. I've solved my own dating issues. Dating was the big one there, by the way.
okay.
There was a time I was banging my head on a wall thinking, why don't I have a girlfriend?
Mm,
And well, now I'm sitting here 4 years after that giant scar was left on my head, and I'm a year and a half into a great relationship. So,
that's great. That's great. Do
but
you
go ahead.
Do you think part of that, because I think I might fall into somewhat of a classic overthinker, and
Right.
sometimes I can over-engineer and overthink things, where I'm like, I'm going to dive into this project. I even reaching out to you, like I'm going to reach out to Sam and see if he wants to hop on a podcast and record something. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, what is Sam going to think? What is he going to say? What is his reaction going to be?
hmm
And I have no reason to think any of that because I don't know you. I'm like, I can send him a DM and he can ignore it and there'll be no loss, you know?
Right.
And I think of that because I worked with a young man a while back on social skills and on job skills and things like that. And I related to him a little bit in that regard. And one of the ways that I helped him work on social skills was like, we just met at a Target by his house. And
Yeah.
I would walk around with him at Target and be like, "Hey, go ask that employee how much this shirt costs." And he's like, "Well, it says right there, it's 12.99." And I'm like,
hmm
"Well, I know, but you need to get used to asking people because his mom would be like, he won't order food. So I don't know how he's going to move out and like get groceries." And he had that much social anxiety that
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
he wouldn't go up to the counter at Burger King and order himself food. He was that terrified. And so just doing things over and over and getting him to get up and get out and see that like, oh, interacting with people isn't as awkward as it is in my head, right?
Right.
And I tend to be that way. I tend to be a classic overthinker. So, what does your process look like as far as like, helping those guys get up and get out? Is there a formula to it? Is there a system?
Yes, there's definitely a system. Now, of course, I'm not going to reveal exactly what this system is. I'll drop some
Sure.
hints in there, of
Yeah, yeah.
course. But the problem with overthinking is that it is a subconscious problem masquerading as a conscious problem. You're aware of like the differences between the conscious mind, the subconscious mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Better question is your audience, or do you want me to just give like a quick 5 minute?
Yeah, quick 5 minute because
Yeah,
the audience, that sounds, I like that. It's intriguing.
yeah. So the conscious mind is the seat of all your rational thought. It is the seat of it is what you are aware of going on in your own head. It is the logic, the reason. It's where all the mathematics you do happen. It's where you shape the words and put them into actual format, where you take
Right.
what you think and put it into a way that's understandable. Now that's great and all. The problem is it's a very slow process. How long does it take you to solve an integral, right? The first time you're doing an integral in mathematics, it's like I have no clue what I'm doing and I literally have to think through every step.
Hmm.
So why then, when you've done that same integral 50,000 times, you don't even have to think about it
Right.
because it's dropping down into your subconscious mind.
Mm.
And that's the power of the subconscious mind. I hate to, that feels like a book title somewhere. I'm just quoting that, right? But the subconscious mind is your fast response system. It's where everything that keeps you alive and advances your survival happens. The problem is that it also talks to you like it's 5 years old. And it doesn't have the words to describe what's going on. It just does it. It's super impulsive. And a lot of social skills, a lot of being very charming and charismatic, is relying on that subconscious process to just do it,
Hmm.
to impulsively do the right thing. And this is the advantage overthinkers have, because if you give them the right tools, if you tell them, here are the principles of how this is working, they can very quickly consciously analyze what's happening and incorporate it in just so fast. Like, for instance, my first client I ever had, we had like 2 or 3 calls, and he incorporated the lessons and made 5 friends in the first week,
Mm.
just without even thinking. That's how quickly that if you're an overthinker, this can happen. And the reason I think that works is you just analyze it from so every angle so quickly that you just see what holds up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I just was reading about this and I got kind of interested and watched a YouTube video about, it was kind of cheesy, but it was people that think deeply, right? And it
Right.
talked about that how there is an advantage and a disadvantage to that where people that think deeply, they can tend to overthink, but they're
Yes.
also, and it's funny because I've talked with my wife about this where I told her, well, I asked her, we were talking about attachment types. I'm not sure if you're familiar with attachment
I've seen a
types,
little bit
but
of that. Yeah.
yeah, I tend to be a little bit more anxious and she tends to be very secure. And I asked her if she is aware of how she's feeling or if she thinks about how she feels. And she's like, and I'm like, it's not good or bad. I'm just asking a question. And she's
Right.
like,
Just what
no,
is.
no, almost never. And I'm like, I am constantly aware of how
Right.
I feel. I'm constantly thinking about my emotions. And she's like, that sounds exhausting. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's very exhausting. And it
Right.
can it can be paralyzing at times, but it can also be powerful at times. And it's just learning how to use it. Sometimes I use it well,
Yes.
sometimes I don't. So your guys that you're coaching, where do they tend to make friends? Is it or I guess I should ask, where do they tend to struggle? Do they tend to struggle in like
Mhm.
an online space and the analog space, like at their jobs, at school, where they're struggling to make friends? Where do you see the biggest hurdles?
It's mostly in real life. So online, there's difference, and I think a lot of it comes down to analytical guys are naturally risk averse.
Okay.
So, and I had to overcome that myself as I grew up being very risk averse. But I can tell you, having to start a business and go out there and talk to people and realizing that if I don't start taking risks, I'm going to die alone and sad
Hmm.
was a pretty powerful motivator.
Hmm.
Coming to that realization of that the life of a man is risk. It's a matter of how well he manages it, which also spun into, oh, I don't have to listen to these guys saying deadlifts will break your back. I just have to make sure I do it correctly.
Yeah.
Or I don't have to listen to all these guys talking about 95% of businesses fail. I just have to realize why they fail and not do those things. So it's a holistic thing. And there's like 2 or 3 mantras, I guess would be the way to describe them, that I had to get down into my subconscious to overcome that risk aversion. Because I do think that God designed every man to be a risk taker. That God designed every man, and this is just part of the nature of testosterone, where it just
Hmm.
dulls your pain and dulls your pain perception. Where I think that's God designing men to be risk takers. Whether that's through, this is one of my favorite terms on Twitter, is retard maxing, right? It's okay, if I act like a total retard would, I can just go and do things and it's going to work, right? I think God gave man a natural ability through testosterone to tap into that some. But back on the point, one of those was realizing one is I am responsible for my own future. If I don't want it, it's because I did not take enough risk or I did not understand what I was doing. The second one is no one is going to come and help me unless I do it myself first.
Mm,
And that's actually it's a very, very existential statement where you have to realize that, oh, I literally am alone in a universe that does not care about me. It's kind of humbling yourself down to about the lowest possible state because through that, I found a whole lot of freedom, realizing, and that also means no one cares what I'm going to do about it,
mm,
which means I can go do whatever is necessary to fix that.
yeah.
And that was probably the breakthrough for me there. And that happened, oh God, 2021. I had just gotten out of a construction job that was just killing me, man. Like 14-hour overnight shifts in the dead of winter pouring concrete, not pleasant. But I came to the realization there that there's no one reaching out here to help me. And my parents, I had a social circle down in Socorro from college I still saw regularly, but it's like 5 days out of the week I don't see them.
Yeah.
So coming to that realization of I am the one who is responsible to make something of myself. And I can actually justifiably be mad at anyone who gets in my way. And while that's not the best motivation, it is a motivation.
Mm.
It does work.
Yeah, I think there's a power in, you said that being risk averse and realizing that like you can do deadlifts and
Yeah,
weighing the cost, the risk versus reward of saying, okay, yeah, there is some inherent risk in deadlifting, but what is the risk of like regretting not learning how to deadlift? That's
right?
probably infinitely greater than just doing the deadlift. And maybe there's like a 10% chance of hurting yourself. But if you don't deadlift, there's probably a 90% chance you're going to be disappointed with yourself
Yep. And there's
and
a
re and re
100%
and
good.
retreat further from risk.
Yeah.
And that is soul crushing, right? And
Yes.
having that ability to um and not in a bitter way, but having an ability to not care what people think and just go and do it anyway and
Yeah.
realize most of the time people aren't thinking about you.
Correct. That was also a huge breakthrough there.
Yeah.
And that was, I had to go out there and there was a couple things I did to do this. One is I shouted out all my dirtiest, darkest secrets just out in the middle of a public park. I had like two people look at me. Now I live in a pretty rough city where there's a lot of crackheads around, so they probably thought I was one of them. But realizing that I just told you every vile thing about myself and you didn't even care.
Yeah.
There's a certain freedom in that. There's certain freedom realizing I can just go be honest about this now.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt me. And then the next realization on top of that was realizing everybody is struggling with the exact same problem that I am. That risk aversion, that I can't reveal myself to anyone, I can't be open or vulnerable.
Right. Yeah, I find myself sometimes too, and I wonder if you run into this in your coaching practice at all. I find myself being envious sometimes of people that have made something of themselves more
Yeah,
than I've made of myself. I mean, I have, I lost my 9 to 5 in January of 2024, and
I'm sorry to hear
um,
that.
yeah, it's tough. You especially as a guy, you wrap a lot of your identity in your career.
Yes.
And my wife and I just decided we run a nonprofit gym and we just decided let's give ourselves a year or two. She does okay. My wife runs her own business and so she's kind of been my sugar mama for the last year and a half, 2 years, which has
Right.
been nice. But she's like, let's just give the gym a go and see if we can make it. And so um, I struggle with people that in my perception, I'm like, well, they're more social than I am. They're more successful than I am. They're more outgoing. They have more money than I do, and
Hmm.
that falling into that trap of comparison, right? And that sort of like at times that has like shut me down, where it's like,
Hmm.
well, it's not even worth trying because I'm never gonna be like that Sam guy who can just hop on a call and overcome these hurdles and things like that. So. How often do you run in terms of overthinking with your clients and with yourself? How often do you run into that sin of comparison, I guess.
I used to do that a lot, but then I realized that I don't have to be like them because A, I've already got inherent dignity that comes from me being created in the image of God. If you want like more in depth about that, go check out GIF Lost on Twitter. He talks a lot about that. Very helpful. Realizing that actually there is a certain level of dignity and respect that I do inherently have a right to from everybody else, just by being created in the image of God. But that said, realizing that even if that other person over there has the perfect image, right? There is something they suck at
Mm. Yeah.
that you are better
Yeah.
at than them. And realizing that it's not about the comparison anymore. It's about you go offer him that
Mm.
to learn everything else.
Yeah.
It's more about that, oh, I know exactly what you're struggling with. Let me go solve that problem for you. Maybe you can help me in return this way.
Yeah, I had a humbling moment. We were in Colorado Springs for a conference, and we were at the Airbnb, and it was probably around February, so it was nice and cool. Colorado Springs. We were
Hmm.
sitting on the back porch of this Airbnb, and I don't smoke cigars or anything, but a couple of my friends they were smoking cigars, and we were just chatting about life. And I said to one of my good friends, he grew up in church, grew up in youth group. His dad was a youth pastor.
Hmm.
And I didn't become a Christian until later in life. I was about 19 years old. And I told him in a lot of ways, I envy you because you seem much more, not sure of his faith, but I was like, you're just more confident with your faith than I am. And I think it's because you've grown up in the church the
Right.
whole time. And he said, I'm kind of envious of you because like, I had to share, his dad was the youth pastor, and he's like, so I had to share my dad with every other kid in church and every other kid in youth group.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, I was kind of humbled that I never saw that from that perspective. In my head, I had this idea of what his life was like and what he thought about it and how easy it was and how good it was. And that sort of comparison was taking something away from our friendship. And
Yeah.
once I kind of got over that insecurity and I voiced that, he was kind of like, "Hey, I actually see it this way." And then
Right.
we bonded over that. It was neat. It was like, "Oh wow, I never thought of that, selfish me." Um,
Yeah.
that being said, I'm curious, your coaching, how often does faith come into it? Do you use that as sort of a foundation for your coaching, or
Not
is that sort of like a side dish, or for lack of a better term?
not necessarily as a foundation, but as a way of explaining concepts, right?
Hmm,
Because it's so foundational to what I do that I just can't see it any other way.
sure.
A lot of the guys I have coached and mentored, I think all of them actually, were Christians as well. So there was a commonality there. But it is not a necessary component to make to getting them the results. That said, is a necessary component to how I do my coaching in terms of the honesty and describing that here's kind of the moral implications of this, and also how I conduct my business. But it is not a fundamental concept to being charismatic. It's an amplification of it.
Hmm, yeah. Yeah, I love that simple illustration of if you can get people to realize that you are a child of God, that you're
Yep.
created in an image. And I even often put it, even if you don't believe that you've still been given a body, whether it's through
Yeah.
chance or whether it's through divine intervention or divine implications. You've been given a life.
Hmm.
Don't take it for granted, and don't, in a sense, you have an obligation not to waste it, right? To make
Correct.
the world around you better, to make your corner of your world better. And a lot of times that's being less introspective and being less of an introvert and more of an extrovert to the extent that that looks like.
Yes.
Um, I love the idea of with this young man I was working with, coaching him and taking him to Target, taking him to Burger King, just giving him little tasks, right? Go ask where the
Hmm.
bathroom is. Go ask how much this shirt is. How often do you run into people? We're in public and we're just going to do this, right? And it's like, no, no, no. Put your phone down and interact with the barista,
Right?
interact with the cashier, interact with I think especially young people,
Yep.
I coach gymnastics in the evenings and I call them screenagers because anytime they get a break,
That's good. That's
anytime they
good.
get a break in their phones, or they're allowed to have their phone, they're right there. And I'm like, okay, guys, let's bring it back in. And it's hard to get them back in.
Hmm.
And I catch myself, I'm on my phone all day. I'm posting memes. I'm interacting with people.
Oh
Even when
yeah.
I'm working, I'm answering emails and phone calls. I find myself getting very like irritated and anxious and antsy, and I kind of get tunnel vision, right?
Yep.
And how much do you wrestle with? online versus analog. I think with young men, it's probably a pretty big hurdle, if that's fair to
So
say.
for the most part, I just keep everything, do it analog, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of what I do there is not to deny the benefits of being online, but to make doing things analog just that much more glorious and enticing. So, and I think that's been no, I'm not going to say I think, that has been a very effective approach. Because guess what? If you're good at being online and you're good at doing things analog, you just got yourself a huge edge,
Mm.
right? And so that's kind of what I start with, say, hey, here's the power you can get out of this. And as working with men, men respond to that power language that you can be better. They respond to that very, very well.
Yes.
So, and I can tell you all of this from just me learning these own skills. As I got more charismatic and more charming, I noticed like, wait a minute, I'm seeing my status rise in every group I'm in. People are turning around and looking up to me and asking for advice. People are
Mm.
turning around and asking me what I think about things. People are looking at my authority and saying, hey, what should we do? I'm like, what did I do different? Right? And it came down to just being able to understand and interact with people in a way that built trust with them.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking that probably has influence in professional settings,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
also in personal settings where your friendships, those non-professional relationships start to enhance too, because you become more like Sam. You become more like the Samuel McGregor that you're supposed to be, right?
Right. I was actually talking with my girlfriend about this, and I'm about to go shoot a sacred cow in a lot of Christianity. And that's the saying of love the sinner, hate the sin. No,
Yeah.
that's a Gandhi quote. God actually does hate people because he knows what he created us to be, and we are standing in the way of that.
Mm.
So that's the core message of the Christian faith is you gotta go die and be resurrected in Christ to go be what God created you to be.
Yeah. And dying to self.
Yep.
And I think in a lot of ways, and that's kind of why I reached out to you. I think in a lot of ways your posts on X and your message sort of resonates with me in that regard of dying to the self, because so much of our anxiety and introverts and people that
Yeah.
struggle in social circles, so much of that comes from us thinking about ourselves.
Yes.
And not necessarily in a selfish way, but it is very selfish.
Yes.
What I care what people think of me, and Sam thinks this and my wife thinks that and my best friend thinks that, and I have no way of knowing what they're thinking.
Correct.
That's
Until
my
you ask them.
flesh. That's that sarx, right? In
Yeah.
scripture it gives that word sarx is a very spiritual, very heavy word, right? And that's my
Yes.
flesh making life about me.
Yeah.
And I have found
Absolutely.
the times where I am the most influential and the most fruitful in my relationships are the times when I'm not focused on myself. The
Yes.
times that I'm like, how can I serve this person better? How can I reach out to this person? And sometimes it's just a text, a phone call, an email, and saying, I don't care. I'm not going to worry about what they think.
Yes.
I'm going to
That's
stop
100% it.
making it about me and make it about them.
Yeah. And that's just the core to charisma right there is people like people that like them. You know how people understand that they like you?
What, how?
Because you show interest in them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
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 Because everybody likes themselves, whether they admit it or not. And if you like me, that means you also like me.
Yeah.
So therefore we have something we both like. Now we have trust.
Yeah. And there's some sales in that.
Yeah.
I am the furthest thing from a salesman, but there's some sales in that, and that you make people feel like you know how to solve their problem, and you make people
Yes.
feel like heard. You make people feel important. You go buy a car, the first thing a salesman asks is, do you have kids? Do you have, what are we looking for? And then they'll show you features of a minivan to help you solve that problem of having kids that you have to solve to bring to soccer practice. And then they
Yes.
give you a water bottle and a donut, and then you feel like you owe them your time because they gave you a water bottle and a donut, right? I've taken
Yes.
consumer psychology classes. I know how it works, but
Well, you want to
um,
know one of the craziest secrets I learned doing all this?
what's that?
Sales and charisma are the exact same set of skills. It's just a matter of what the end goal is that makes them different.
Mm,
That's it. With charisma, there is no end goal. It's just I'm going to leave that out up in the air that you generally like me. With sales, it's saying, okay, I know you like me. Here's how you can return the favor.
yeah. Do
That's the only
you?
difference.
Yeah. I love that, and I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit. And I'm
Hmm.
curious, do you find, I have a good friend. He's a good salesman. He's a great friend, and I have no issue with him at all outside of he's a salesman. But I think sometimes sometimes my red flags go up with friends that I have that are very charismatic because I wonder where is the line between uh, genuine and fake? Where is the line between I am selling you who I am and I am showing you who I am?
Hmm.
Because I can pretend, I can sell this idea of who I am to you to anybody, right? But if it's not me deep down, I think eventually that's going to come out.
Hmm.
How do you bridge that gap between charisma and genuine, I guess?
Well, you're looking at the wrong conflict. It's a false dichotomy
What do you mean?
because the reality there is that some of the most charismatic people will shred you 5 different ways to Sunday because you're doing it wrong. But because you understand that they are trying to solve your problems for your benefit, it comes across as charismatic.
Hmm.
They could be sitting there screaming that you are the worst person they've ever worked at with and that you have no clue what you're doing. But you also know that if they're going to sit down and work with you to fix it, problem solved. Because the entire point there, and this is why I always have a little bit of roughness that I maintain about myself, because that's where you get into that uncanny valley, too polished. This is just doesn't seem genuine.
Yeah.
He is too perfect, right?
Yeah.
He's too smooth, he's too suave. So keeping a little bit of that roughness keeps you human. So you also hear
Mm.
that sometimes I'm a little stuttery, I'm a little bit shoot, there's a filler word right there. By really thinking about it, I actually don't use filler words, which is a very interesting place to be in. But having a little bit of that human flaw, it's called a harmless flaw, actually boosts the charisma than having no flaws at all.
I love that. I love that because those I catch myself. I go back and listen to podcasts when I'm editing. I'm like, dude, how many times did you say right?
Right?
And I found if I can teach myself to pause and just
Yep.
sort of take a second and think, that's much better than the ums, right?
Right.
Those flaws sort of shine through and force me to pause and think about what I'm going to say rather than stutter over what I'm going to say. But I love that idea of sort of being a little bit raw and a little bit unfiltered. That's probably why I don't like HR.
Oh,
So
100%. I feel you
because
there.
they have that toxic positivity where, before I got let go from my job in last year, 2 years ago, I found myself interacting with HR a lot more because we're going to take this department and merge them, right?
Right.
And I had survived 4 rounds of layoffs before that. So I was on eggshells anyway. I'm
Right.
like, it's probably only a matter of time before I get laid off. I was still unprepared for it, but I wasn't surprised. But I spent a lot of time with HR and they sort of talk to you like this and they do that up talk. And Sam, how's your afternoon? Is it raining where
Okay, this
you
podcast
are?
is over. We're
Is
done.
it?
I hate that voice.
I just triggered you. Is it? And I'm like, dude, I am not 5 years old. And I would find
Yeah.
myself getting angry. And they're like, are you okay today? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And inside, I'm screaming because I'm like, quit talking to me like I'm a child. I'm a 40-year-old man, like
Yeah.
it's it is very, and I don't know if it's a generational thing where there
No, that's
there's a young people that want that they want to be sort of coddled and talked to. Don't use any harsh language because that comes across as mean. Sometimes it's just honesty. It's not mean. It's
yeah.
Sam, you dropped the ball on this. And honestly, I think as men, that comes across a little differently. I could, you might have a
Oh,
good
certainly.
friend. You might have a good friend that would say something, "Hey, dude, you really let me down," and you're like, "Ah, yeah, you know what? My bad."
I am that friend that tells people that, by the way.
Okay. It's good to have friends like that.
Yes. And this is part of the reason I can very confidently say learning charisma is a skill issue. It is something that you can learn to do
Mm.
because I speak very, in my natural state, if I'm not thinking about it, I speak very bluntly, I speak very passionately, and I put a whole lot of fire and flame on what I'm saying, especially when I'm talking about major issues I see and people are being hypocrites about it. It's like, all right, let me go get the sledgehammer here.
Hmm.
And there's a time and a place for that. That's part of Christmas as well, is knowing time and places for things.
Sure.
For instance, you can't save everybody, but you might be able to save the crowd that's watching you do this.
Hmm. Yeah.
Maybe you can't save the guy you're fighting, but everyone sees how well you slew him, so they come to your side.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the cold, logical realities of being very charismatic and understanding interpersonal dynamics, is you realize just how really screwed up a lot of people are.
Sure.
And that sometimes you cannot do anything for them but to cut them down to size.
Yeah.
And I know we all hate being cut down to size, right? And it can be the most necessary thing that needs to happen in the world.
Yeah. And it doesn't, like you said, there's a time for, iron sharpens iron. We tend to think that that
Yes.
is a very blunt and like messy and whatever, just go in there with a sledgehammer. But it's actually a very like precision. They
Yes.
have the one piece of iron at a very specific angle and they hit it at a very specific angle. And it's actually very precise. And there may be times to go in with a sledgehammer and
Yep.
cut somebody down. But there may be other times where, you need to know when to go in with a sledgehammer or a jackhammer, and other times when to be precise. Um,
Correct.
and I think there is some room for fluff. There is some time for,
Oh, most certainly.
a little bit of truth and love, right? And I
Yes.
always come back to the idea of Jesus saying, go get your husband, and she says, I have no husband.
Hmm.
And he knows that, right? He doesn't have to accuse her. He doesn't have to call her names. All he has to do is ask her a question. And then she's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I have to answer for myself now."
And
Right?
that right there is the core issue is are people willing to give you the correct, honest answer about what you ask them? Or are they trying to still hide and conceal it?
Mm,
Because if they're still trying to hide and conceal it, that's when you break out the sledgehammer.
yeah.
That's when you just pull back the curtain and say, everyone, here's what this looks like. Isn't it glorious? Right?
So as somebody who coaches, is it exclusively young men or primarily or
It's only been young men so far,
okay.
yes.
Okay. And I think there's probably maybe there's a reason for that. I think women tend to be more sociable
This is true.
than men generally. Not to stereotype, but I think that's true.
There's
Um,
also psychological precedent for that. I was just reading a study the other day that when men and women are confronted with a problem, there was an experiment done where doctors were looking about, it was like the same set of problems. Doctors or researchers were then looking about what area of the brain activates.
okay.
For women, it was actually all the verbal processing
Yeah.
centers. For men, it was all the tool use and analysis centers.
Yeah.
So there is some psychological precedent for
Yeah.
that.
I think there's a reason in church too when they have, women's ministry and women's events, there's 100 women that attend. And when they have men's events,
Right?
there's five that attend, right? Because men are just
Right.
like we're tend to be more problem solvers, more analytical, a little less social.
Yes.
Um, I wonder if there is a time where you encourage men to pull back on that and say, "Oh, maybe you overshared, or maybe you were too blunt, or maybe that was too big of a sledgehammer." How do you walk that balance?
For the most part, I actually haven't had to do that because a lot of people aren't even aware the difference exists, right? So I'm only now getting to a guy who's already just very naturally charismatic. The problem is he's kind of like my polar opposite in that regard, where he's very naturally charismatic, but he has a problem with being a people pleaser.
Ah,
And so now I'm having to teach him the way of using the sledgehammer. And he's the first guy I've really had to do with that with. For the
mm,
most part, a lot of the guys I coached kind of landed somewhere in the middle, where it's like they're either trying so hard to not be offensive that they either say nothing at all or just really, really
mm.
hold back on it. Or other than that, they come across as very, very blunt and not sociable at all. But for the most part, I found that it's more just a lack of any sort of polarizing feature rather than too far in one or the other.
Yeah, I like that, and it kind of brings it's something I've been kind of stuck on for a while. There is a guy, Adam Lane Smith, been following
I've
for
heard
a
that name,
while.
yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of attachment type stuff. That's his
That's right.
specialty.
Yes, now I remember.
Yeah, and I come back to that a lot because, like I said, I tend to be more anxious where I might tend to overshare and share in the wrong places at the wrong time and things like
Right.
that, and because I feel like I have to, right? I feel like I have to. and have to in order to mend that conversation or fill a hole in the conversation, or I want these
Right.
people to like me and I want these people to think this, and so I have to work to sort of fill up space, right? And then tend to overshare. And I have a good friend who I suspect, I haven't approached him about it yet, but I suspect he's a little bit more avoidant because
Hmm.
he is very much go along to get along. I don't want to rock the boat. I just want to make people happy. And that's
Yep.
fine for a while. But then it gets to a point where when you work with people that are people pleasers, it's like, hey, I kind of want you to have an opinion.
Yeah.
I kind of want you to choose between Pizza Hut and Domino's. I don't want you to go, oh, whatever you want every time. I
Hmm.
want you to care about something passionately. And that's really interesting that it's not necessarily about lacking social skills. Sometimes it's about how utilizing the social skills. You can still be very charismatic and still struggle with social skills in the sense that uh, you might be avoidant and you might just try to be a people pleaser. That's interesting.
Yes. And this is something funny I tell my guys as coaching is that you actually already know everything I'm about to teach you. You've just never put the patterns together,
Yeah.
right? For instance, I that was my post today I put about everyone knows the gamer crouch, that if you spam the crouch button a ton and someone mirrors it back, it's like, oh, they're being friendly. We can go talk and trust to each other now, right?
Yeah.
Turns out that's actually based very heavily in human psychology, that if we mirror each other, that if we mirror each other's posture or tonality or gestures, it's functioning the exact same way.
Hmm.
So for instance, you can kind of see we almost have the same posture here where we're kind of leaning on our hands
Yeah.
like that. That's mirroring. It's a sign that we're getting along, we're going well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, here's the really scary part. And this is what sets like politicians like Bill Clinton, who, whatever you think about his policies in personal life, he knew how to work a crowd. Is the very charismatic people use that very tactically, but make it look effortless.
Yeah.
And so that's a very scary place to be in.
Yeah. That's a very good but very dangerous skill to
Yeah,
have,
and this
right?
is and this is why social skills and charisma is so powerful and why it's such an incredible skill for men to have.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
now what you've done is you've taken all the social leverage from everybody else and you've put it into your own body.
Yeah.
So that's why
Well,
it's so scary.
yeah, on a base level, Jordan Goldstein, I had a chat with him. He's very into the intersection of philosophy and sports, and how
Hmm.
sports are a very philosophical and very spiritual act. And when you talked about mirroring, I thought of you go to a sporting event, right? You go your favorite football team, and you don't know the
Hmm.
person next to you, but oh, it's in group and out group. You have the same
Yep.
jersey I do. We're best friends, right?
Yep.
And this other guy, he's got a red jersey on, but we have blue jerseys. This guy in the red jersey, he's the enemy.
Right?
And it's like you might outside of the arena, you might be best friends with that guy in the other color jersey, and you might
Yep.
hate the guy with the same jersey, but just because you're in the arena and you're mirroring, you're cheering for the same team, you're
Yes.
doing
You're
the same chants, you can sort of you can sell them your friendship, right?
yes, you're
On a
starting to
very
understand
base
how this principle works.
yeah,
Yeah.
a very base level. It's sports is the same thing. I mean, I'm a psych major. I got my master's in psychology, but it was in
Hmm.
psychology with like an emphasis in forensics and criminal psychology. And I think
Hmm.
of, the idea that people get involved in gangs and people get involved in crime for one of two reasons. They either think they can get it on a base level, they either think they can get away with it, or they do it for uh, safety. They do it for a sense of belonging.
Right.
They do it for a sense of camaraderie, right? Um, I don't have a family. My family fell apart. This gang says they can be my family. Who doesn't want that, right? And that
Right.
doesn't excuse crime, but just on a base level, that's we want safety and we want to be people with people that think like us and look like
Yep.
us and can promise us things and promise us safety.
Yep.
There's comfort in that, right? Um, and I wonder too, when you find people that are, if you've ever worked with a young man that I think it just sort of a whether or not it's an epidemic of like a male loneliness or things like that, how do you steer men towards positive relationships? How do you steer more
Hmm.
men towards those positive social circles? Because they're kind of getting the same feeling, right? Whether it's a positive or negative social circle, they might be getting that sense of
The
comfort
need is met either way.
that the need is
Yeah.
met either way, right? How do you steer them towards positive social circles?
Well, do you? Have you seen any of the Manosphere content over on Twitter? Not like the pop stuff, but like truly like the guys who put a ton of work into this. Kind of the
Um,
intersexual dynamics.
Possibly. I'm not
Yeah.
sure who you're referring to, but
So I was thinking Rollo Tomasi in particular. He would actually be probably be a very good example of this. Or oh, who's another good example?
I'll
Oh,
look him up right now.
Rollo's coming to mind. So
Yeah,
was it
I'll
Aaron
pull him up right now
Clary's?
and give him a follow.
Yeah. His the idea comes down to, and this is a concept I got from the Manosphere, is the idea of amoral concepts. Concepts that neither are right nor wrong, but just are.
Mm,
Simply, this is what is. And so this is what I teach a lot of the guys is I will teach you what the moral code to use this into a positive direction is. But that is not my main focus. My main focus is simply telling you what's going on and how to observe it and how to work with it for whatever effect you want. You can use that positively, you can use that negatively, but it is what's going to happen. And I
so
learned a lot of that concept from Rollo because he does the same thing, but in terms of male female attraction.
okay. So sort of like almost like neutralizing yourself and sort of looking at the situation as if you were outside of it and saying, okay,
Correct.
this isn't necessarily good or bad, or, there might be two versions of good or two versions of bad and sort of trying to stay neutral with it.
A little bit. And I can go very passionate on saying, no, you don't want to do that. This is
Sure.
what's going to happen, right? But it's like teaching a kid how to use a knife. Yeah, you can do a whole lot of damage with that knife. You can also do a whole lot of good with that
Yeah.
knife.
Yeah. Yeah. I say that a lot about fire when I'm
Yep,
coaching young men that look, sometimes things aren't good or bad. Fire is neutral.
it just is.
How do you use it is what matters, right? If it's in a
Correct.
fireplace, it's in a fire ring, you're using it to cook, you're using it to stay warm, it's great. The moment it gets outside of that fireplace or that fire ring or off of that match, wherever it's at, it can become very destructive.
Yes. And it's the exact same with social skills, right? Because I know we know Bill Clinton used it to his own demise.
Yeah.
But you can turn around and go look at George Washington, who used it to great effect.
Yeah, and
Same office.
you think a lot of the classic stereotypes, movies and serial killers and the sort of men that are more inclined to pathological or
Psychopathy or whatever.
psychopathy, yeah, psychotic behavior and things like that. Or narcissism, Machiavellianism, they tend to be
Hmm.
pretty charismatic and pretty sociable and likable. You kind
Yep.
of want to be around them. And so it's the same thing. Those social skills can be used for good, used for evil.
You know who
The
else
the
is very
tool the tool itself is
Machiavellian?
neutral though.
You know who else was very Machiavellian?
Who's that?
I've actually got two examples that come to mind. Number one is King Solomon in the Bible,
Mm,
and number two is also James Bond.
yeah,
And both of those two people are held up as absolute heroes.
yeah,
The Machiavellianism is not the problem. It is simply this is how things work.
yeah,
It is what to what end are you going to use them?
yeah. And I think you could argue Solomon was a very flawed
Oh,
hero,
100%.
and he knew it. I mean, you read, towards the end of his life, he knew so much of what I did is meaningless. So much of what I
Yeah.
worked for was dust in the wind,
Yeah.
so to
I
speak.
love Ecclesiastes. It's my second favorite
Oh
book.
yeah, yeah. It's a hard read. It's a hard read
It's a
because
sobering read.
it's one of those where you're like, wait a minute, I do this. Wait,
Right?
I try to manipulate things to benefit me even when it hurts other people, and I try to, we
Yep.
we tend to not be honest about that, I think too, as
Yeah.
we think well, it benefited me, so how can it be wrong? How can it be bad if it benefited me, right? And that's sort of
Yep.
where that sales and that social skills come in. The salesman that is filling a need is different than the salesman that is trying to manipulate somebody to get in over their head or
Yep.
buy something they can't afford, essentially.
Are you
Um,
ready for another absolute, just like, holy cow, that's how that works?
oh yeah, let's do it.
The salesman that turns around and says, this is not for you, and I am not going to sell it to you because you're about to get it over your head, is going to make more sales than the one who doesn't.
I believe it.
because you're building that trust again. You're saying, no, I am interested in you winning more than I am in making this sale.
I believe it.
So it
What?
seems very counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But that's because we are so far removed from our own human elements and understanding that this is just how the dynamic works, that it doesn't work on logic, it works on trust and felt trust. And we
Mm.
look when we look at it through the perspective of if they feel like they trust me, they are more likely to do what I want.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental principle.
Yeah. I think of that in relationships. You talk about having a girlfriend and developing those social skills. And, I've been married for 20 years. We celebrated
Congratulations.
20 years in August. Yeah, thank you. And I, I've learned over time there's a big difference. This is a good skill to have like at work too, in the workplace. I've learned
Yep.
that there is a big difference between do you need anything else from me and can I do anything else for you? You're
Hmm.
about ready to clock out. Do you need anything else from me? That sort of puts the burden on them. Like you're bothering me, but I'm willing to stay 10 more minutes if there's something else you need from me. Versus, can I do anything else for you? It's I'm taking your burden and putting it on me voluntarily, and I'm going to offer my services to you. And
Yep.
when you go to your girlfriend or your wife and you need anything else from me, she might, but she'll say, no, 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 that's okay. I don't want to bother you.
Hmm.
But when you turn that around and you just reframe that, can I do anything else for you? It's kind of like, oh, he wants to do something for me. That's really
Hmm.
nice. They're going to remember that more and that's sort of that subtle shift of now, ideally, you want that to come from a
A
good
place of
heart.
actually wanting to do it.
Yeah, you want that to come from a place that actually wants to serve, but in a way that almost doesn't matter,
Correct.
right? Because you reframing it at least illustrates that, hey, I am willing to stay and an extra 5, 10 minutes or whatever, help you finish up this project. I'm willing to stay up 10 more minutes, help you finish the dishes before we go to bed or whatever that is. There's some
And so,
charisma, there's some sales in that, so to speak.
absolutely. And you actually added a really good way to do the balance there, is you set a time bound on it, saying, I've got 10 minutes. Can I do anything else for you? Because what you're
Yeah.
saying is you're not denying your idea, your own self that, oh, I'm tired. I can't really give anymore. You're saying just give a little bit. We're going to bound it and then we carry on.
Mm.
What was the other one here? And here's actually how you turn this into power. Because I'm about to shoot another sacred cow in a lot of the big churches, and that's the idea of servant leadership. Because the idea behind servant leadership is that the leader serves by just doing whatever his people want. I think the more biblical understanding is the leader serves his people by leading. Because
Mm.
you having been in the position of having to lead teams, you understand how it's like pulling teeth to get people to make a decision, right? You understand that making a tough call saying, no, we can't do that, and I can't tell you why. Or you have to go to a guy who's throwing gym weights around and you have to go have that conflict. That is the service a leader provides.
Mm.
And he does it so that no one else has to go through that unpleasantness.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you could almost argue that that is a we tend to take servant leader and think that that's somebody that sort of approaches things with their hands in their pockets and oh, whatever you guys want to do is fine. And I think, like you said, being a servant also means you are serving them in the sense where you are speaking truth into their life. And you're saying, hey,
Correct.
I think I think this organization is going the wrong direction. This is the direction we should go.
Correct.
Um, and not necessarily having to spell out why every step of the way. Because ultimately, as a leader, that responsibility is yours, right? And if
Yep.
that organization, that idea, that outfit succeeds or fails, people are going to look to you, right? I
Correct.
mean, my wife and I, we run a nonprofit gym, and I have a board of directors that I answer to. It's a small board, it's a local board, but ultimately, if the gym fails, it's not their fault,
Yeah.
right? It's
Right.
I didn't work hard enough. The timing wasn't right or whatever. Or the economy took a dump, whatever. But ultimately, it falls on me, right? Because I have that director title, and and I need to direct.
Yep.
You know, um, there is such a thing as death by committee.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and
I am so well aware of that one.
there's a charisma to being able to make decisions and
Yep.
saying, this is the direction we're going. I don't know for sure if it's going to work, But if it doesn't, we're going to adapt and improvise, right? This is where we're going. Um,
Most attractive trait in a man right there, by the way, is that certainty and that confidence.
yeah.
So this actually gets into one of the debates we had is that women saying we want men to vent to us. No, they don't. Observed behaviors, no, they don't. What they want is you to say, this is what is, and here's what I'm going to do about it. Yes,
Hmm.
I feel tired, so what I'm going to go do is go get a workout in, hop in the shower, and then I'm going to come back to you.
Ah, yeah.
They're looking for that action orientation there, that confidence of this will solve it.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't necessarily want to hear, I'm tired and I don't really know what to do about it. And then they make suggestions. No, I don't think I want to do that. And I think there is room for your wife, your spouse being a helpmeet and you're supposed to collaborate.
Yep,
And hey, I'm tired. I'm not really sure what to do about it. Do you have suggestions for me? There's a difference between that and sort of approaching it in an unconfident sense and saying,
correct.
I don't really know. And then she makes suggestions. No, that's not what I want. There are times when I don't know what I want. And
Right?
I tell my wife, what? I don't know what I want, or I'm mad. I don't really know why I'm mad. I'm just in a pissy mood. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Maybe I'm hungry. I don't know. Um, there's a difference between that, and I think, and like you said, sort of being unsure and being
Yes.
unconfident, and it's okay to not know every once in a while, but to put that burden on her,
And
she
you
doesn't
just
want that.
correct. And you just described what the leader's burden is that he serves the rest of those under his command with. Is he
Mm.
takes on the burden of uncertainty so that his people only know certainty.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah, kind of a bitter pill to swallow.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I just came up with that on the fly, by the way. It finally clicked.
No, I like that. I like that. Write that down. I'll
Right?
quote that. I'll quote that, and I'll send it to you.
But
That
you take
way,
a look at any entrepreneur or military leader or whatever, right? That's what they're doing. And the more uncertainty they turn into certainty, the higher they are in the hierarchy.
yeah, yeah. I think in terms of social skills, I guess, how important do you think it is for the word of men being vulnerable and stuff that idea gets thrown around a lot. How important do you think that is? Or I guess if it is important, what does that look like? I think there's probably a degree where that's been sort of bastardized a little bit. And
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think that vulnerability is, my wife doesn't want me to be unsure. My wife doesn't want me to cry on her shoulder every night. My wife doesn't want me to, I'm an emotional guy. I'm a crier.
Right.
I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like there's commercials that'll get me teared up. It's like, oh, look at the
Right?
puppy.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I don't know. I kind of lost my train of thought with the
Yeah, I hear
question,
what
but
you're saying, right?
I guess where's the line between vulnerability and toxic masculinity, I guess. And I think of the HR speak where it's like they went the other way and they were toxically positive.
Yep.
And I think there's a line between men being vulnerable and men being weak, I guess. Where is that line in your estimation?
That line is what I would consider the middle road of honesty, which is to say that this is what is. I can say, this is what I feel about that right now. I don't understand why. I don't understand how that's going to work. That is fine to admit. But what you're showing then is you have to follow that up with here's what we're going to do about it.
Hmm.
It's that action orientation, that outward focus of now here's what we have to do about it, right? For instance, this is what all the charismatic speakers talk about, is they're able to tap onto the heart posture of all of their followers, right? Go take a look at what was that from the movie Patton, right?
Yeah.
The intro speech,
Yeah.
right? Where he's just sitting there and he just taps right into the anger of all of his soldiers, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna go kill them Nazi bastards, right? That's a certain vulnerability there because usually when men get angry, they are not thinking clear-headedly.
Hmm.
And what Patton then does in that speech is he takes all of that riling uncertainty and says, here's exactly what we're going to go do with it.
Yeah.
It's a lightning bolt of clarity right into all of his people.
Yeah.
He's now give them a channel and a direction to go put it all.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think that middle ground is. I was joking around with my dad and my girlfriend that all leadership is self leadership. It's just a matter of who chooses to follow after.
Yeah.
Because if you are able to channel that in yourself, to take all that roiling chaos of emotion and put it into a certain direction, you would be surprised how many people will look up to you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, in those times of uncertainty, when you like if I approach my board or I approach my wife and I say, "Hey, there's this situation. I'm not really sure what to do." And you go to them for suggestions, there's a little bit of humility in that. But I have found myself, and I don't know the psychology or the sort of philosophy behind this necessarily, but I have found myself once the team agrees with an idea, I'm like, yes, I get excited. And it's not even my idea. Most of
Yeah,
the time when it's my idea, I'm kind of like, I don't know. And my team's like, no, this is really cool. And I'm kind of like, I'm kind of a little bit less confident about it. But when it's
yeah.
their idea, I'm like, oh, cool. They came up with an idea. Let's go. Let's execute it.
That's that overthinking kicking in again.
Yeah.
So, and this is why I tell my girlfriend all the time, perspective versus permission,
Ooh,
right? And that's is I will never ask your permission to do anything, but I will ask your perspective on it,
there you go.
right? Because it's a humble admission that I am not omniscient, that I don't know everything, and that you might have an angle on this that I really, really need to hear. But it also to say is I am not going to leave you with the burden of uncertainty with it.
Yeah.
What we're doing there is now we've both focused ourselves on the problem there.
Yeah.
And this is what I found all the good military leaders I've worked with have done is they talk about the open door policy, and the best ones are like, you can come say whatever you want in here, do it respectfully. But I'm not necessarily going to listen to that.
Hmm.
If it's a good idea and I think actually that's really valuable, I will incorporate that. It's also saying actually that's not a smart idea at all. Here's where I see that's wrong with that. Let me teach you how to do it better.
Yeah. And I
It always
think,
gets flat back onto what are we doing wrong and what can we do to solve it.
yeah. And that's sort of that analytical engineer mind is where there's a cog in the machine that's missing a tooth. And
Yeah.
which cog do we need to fix? Because if we fix, there's a worm gear and there's like a chase gear underneath the worm gear, right? And so often
Yeah.
we are fixated on fixing all the gears underneath. And it's like, no, the
Yep.
problem's been with the worm gear the whole time. And so
Correct.
knowing where the problem is and knowing how to just go in and fix it and not overthink feelings and not overthink, well, what
Yeah.
is everybody thinking? And we need everybody's opinion about what gear is broken.
No, you don't.
Yeah, right, exactly, exactly. That's that overthinking that comes in.
Yeah.
Um, and I think in a sense the world needs a little bit of both, right? The world needs a little
Yeah.
bit of analytical and a little bit of bluntness and a little bit of this is what's wrong. It also needs a little bit of sensitivity because we need art, we need creativity,
Oh, yeah.
but we also need machines and we also need stuff,
Yes.
right?
And right now, in terms of the technical fields, we do not need the more bluntness. You add even a little bit of charisma into there. Oh my gosh, things will function so much better.
Mm,
But in terms of a lot of our morality, a lot of how we go about living our lives, no, we need the bluntness right now because we have
yeah,
gotten ourselves so far disconnected from God and his thoughts and his standards that it's like, are y'all hypocrites or are you idiots? Right?
yeah,
And so that's where that bluntness and that truth telling comes in to be so useful. Yes, it sucks and it's going to sting. That's part of the point to know that actually you're still alive because dead men don't feel pain.
hmm. I don't know if you've seen there's my friend and I we send each other a lot of gym reels and
Hmm.
on Instagram and there's some when it's like when your buddy says he thinks he's gonna skip the gym in the morning and it's that clip from Friday where it's Debo, stop being a bitch and come on, right?
Yep,
And
exactly.
and David Goggins just yelling at you and it's like sometimes we just need that. We just need
Yep,
to be yelled at, right? And we need to be told you are being lazy right now. Yeah, you know what I
yep.
am. And I think there's a way to do that where you're putting people down, but you're at the same time you're telling them, I'm only telling you this because I think you can be better,
Correct.
because you have value, because you are made in God's image. I don't want
Because you
you,
are better than what you are right now.
yes, yes, I don't want you to struggle with being a husband, with being a father, with being a good boyfriend, with being a good employee, because you can rise to so much better, especially if you believe that you are made in the image of God. If
Yep.
you are made in the image of God, then you have almost an obligation to be as good as you can be, right? And
Yep.
be, you don't have to be perfect. You're going to make
Not at
mistakes. You're
all.
flawed, but to perform and to work hard.
To
And
whom much is given, much is expected.
yes, and I think there's a difference too between, a lot of coaches, like I mentioned, I coach gymnastics in the evenings, right?
Yeah.
And it's very part-time, but I think there's a difference between, and I see it with the kids it's very part-time. I just do like a strength and conditioning and stretching drills and stuff for them. I'm nowhere
Yeah.
near a head coach. I don't know enough about gymnastics to do it,
Right.
but I'm also a psych major. And I know the kids that show up and they work hard and they may not be the best athletes. There's also kids there that are great athletes, but they have the worst attitude. They
Yep.
are they're never happy when they're there. They cause more disruptions than they cause camaraderie. And then there's kids there that they're not the best athletes, but they work hard. They cheer their teammates on. And most coaches and most, I think, employers would rather have they want a good balance, right? They want high
Oh yeah.
performers and they want skilled people. But it's very it's much more beneficial, I think, long term to have people that are coachable and to have people that are practice a little bit of humility and honesty and vulnerability, and also people that are going to cheer people on. They're people that are super skilled but lack those social skills, for lack of a better term, right?
Oh yeah. All
Um,
social skills starts with humility, by the way.
mm,
It's to understand that you are not the most important person right now.
yeah,
Even if you are, you're not.
yeah, and that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier that when we tend to overthink, we're just thinking about ourselves.
Correct.
I had a I had a therapist one time. He was like, so if I can forget exactly the way he put it, but he said basically, if you can think maybe I'm overthinking it, you're probably overthinking it, right?
Yeah.
If you can step back and say, I'm overthinking this, he's like, then you're overthinking it.
Yep.
Quit thinking so much. And
Yeah.
it's funny that I did social work, and so I did a lot of paraprofessional work with counselors and therapists and things like that. And there's some very good ones. Unfortunately, the last 10 years, there's a lot of not good ones
Mm,
in that
I
in
hear
that
you.
profession anymore. And picked up a lot of skills where I'd be working on something with a kid, and I would meet with their counselor, meet with their therapist, and they would say something, and I'd be like, "Ooh, that actually helps me."
Right?
Right? I had one therapist, I heard her say, "Well, thoughts aren't things. Thoughts are just thoughts." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's so good."
Right?
Right? Because I can think all day, what is Sam thinking? What is Sam thinking? But those are still just thoughts. I don't really
Yeah.
know what you're thinking, right?
Yeah.
That's that overthinking, and that has been a detriment to my social skills for sure, is overthinking. I look back at the last 10 years or so and think about times where it's like, man, I struggled with those social skills, and that's why it was 90% it was overthinking.
So here's something fun I did with my guys when I was still leading Bible study is whenever they're talking about, oh, I'm so scared to go ask this girl out and go talk to her, I'm like, stop. I want you to take your hand. I want you to reach down between your legs and squeeze really hard what's there just to make sure it's still attached. And that little bit of pain would get them right out of that mindset there with the humor, right?
Yeah.
And you would be surprised how many guys started asking out girls after that.
Mm.
Because again, that's not a conscious process. You cannot outthink that. You literally just have to go at it, balls to the wall, and see what happens. More times than not, it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when this young man that I worked with, the kid drove me nuts because he would struggle with all these things, and then he would just kind of like you said, it seemed like he would just reach between his legs and realize what he's got, and then just go do something. And I'm
Yeah,
like, where has that skill been for the last 6 months? He ended up graduating. He was in a high school, and he was in a dual enrollment program with a school that was teaching him it was welding. So he got a welding
yeah,
certification right after high school. The kid got a job making 20 bucks an hour, not a ton of money, but at 18, 19 years old, that's pretty good.
solid.
Making 20 bucks an hour, working between 40 and 55 hours a week. All he was doing was spot welding trailers to deliver mobile homes. So, he'd go in and spot weld and repair and fix these trailers to deliver mobile homes and then clock out and go home. 19 years old, making like 50 grand a year. And I told him, I said, you know what minimum wage was when I was 19 years old? I was like, I think it was like 575, maybe. It might have been 515. He's like, are you serious? He's like, he was dumbfounded that, but all he did was he just went in and talked to the people and said, hey, I just graduated high school. I got these welding certificates from, I forget the name of the school, from this school.
Yeah.
Are you guys hiring? And he applied, he interviewed, and got the job like the next week. And I was like, dude, where have these skills been the whole
Right.
time? And he had some help along the way. He had some help from me and from mom and from his grandparents and things like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
I felt for the kid, and I kind of wanted to touch on this too, if you got time.
Oh, I got time.
Okay, I he one of the reasons he struggled, he lost his dad
Yep, there it is.
at a young age, and I wish I could remember why because this was years ago. I don't remember if his dad died or his dad left. I want to say his dad left when he was a kid,
Hmm.
and he struggled, I think, in the sense lack of confidence and things like that. But I think he also just sort of a fear of rejection,
Yep.
and he had his small circle of online and gaming and things like that, and
Been there, done that.
he had his friends that he connected with online, and that was his social circle. And I tried to encourage him. There's nothing wrong with that, right? That's
Hmm.
perfectly normal. It's perfectly healthy, especially now. To my
Yeah.
kids have that. They see their friends at school, and especially my younger boy, he's got his friends that he plays games with online and
Yeah.
stuff, and that's just where we're at. But that was all he had. And there were times when I'd be working with him and I'd say, "Hey, mom, this is what me and your son are working on." And she would say, "I don't think he's going to be able to do that." And I was just like, and she would say it right in front of him too. And I'm like,
Oh,
"Mom,
jeez.
come on."
Oh.
And I'm like, this kid he already is struggling with masculinity because
Yeah.
he had his grandpa and he looked up to his grandpa a lot, but his grandpa was pretty old.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was driving him to school one day because we met at a Starbucks, or it was either Starbucks or a Burger King or something right by his school. And it was like 2 miles down the road. So I was dropping him off after we met. And he said, "Do you think about death a lot?" Just kind of out of the blue, right? And talking about social skills. I'm like, dude, that's not a question you lead with. But I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, but a lot of times I used to think about it when I was younger a lot, but now that I'm older and I'm busy, you just don't think about it as much. And he said, "Oh, I think about it a lot because, like, I'm really close with my grandpa and I don't really know my dad, and my grandpa's getting old, and I'm just really scared about what's going to happen when he dies." And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm about ready to drop you off at school. Why are you dropping this bomb on me? But I'm glad he felt confident and felt comfortable enough to open up to me in that way.
Right.
But I guess how often do you run into that of there's reasons people struggle with social skills, right?
Oh, yeah.
I hate the word trauma because that word's just been thrown
So
around so
overused.
much and
Yeah.
so overused and bastardized. But how much of that do you run into where a lot of these confidence and these social skills come to a lack of role models and lack of those analog relationships with especially older men to sort of pour
It's
into you?
it's less the lack of relationships with older men and more of anytime these guys have taken initiative, they've been punished for it.
Mm,
And I lay the blame for that squarely at the feet of education. Because take a look, right? I don't know. I have a story from one of my friends in elementary school where he got punished for reading too far ahead. Like, what?
wow.
Right? He got detention for that. I've got stories of actually, no, we're not going to. Everybody has to read the same book when it's like, I'm way up here. Let me push myself, right? Let me
Mm,
take that risk and have the risk of failure and let me just push myself into seeing how far I can go with this. And so what that ends up doing is basically just snipping the balls off a man, right? Because
yeah.
part of growing up as a man is to realize that the only way I will grow is if I push myself and see how far I can go. Not in a way
Yeah.
that's testing necessarily against authority, but a way to see of what am I capable of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and that's actually exactly because this is something women, God bless them, do not understand. It's just not a part of how women become women. And so when you've got that kid's mother coming before him saying, I don't think he can do that, that's just going right back at it.
Mhm.
Because no, you have to look at the guy and say, yeah, you may not be able to do it, but I sure want to see you try and see you have fun doing it.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
there's that honesty again versus that go for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some of the kids I coach at gymnastics, I'll have them do something simple like push-ups and they'll do
Yeah.
five of them and they'll be like, this is hard. Well, this is hard.
Yes.
I'm like, where? I, that's irrelevant to me. I don't care that it's hard. Do it. They're going to help you be a better athlete. They're going to help you be strong. And
Yeah.
I'm just having you do push-ups. I'm not having you do some crazy skill like, oh, these are hard. I have to do five of them. I'm like, where is it written that it's supposed to be easy? And that sort of that I'm like, where does this lack of confidence or this lack of willingness to do something that's hard come from? And I think it's part of that might be they've been punished for in a sense, maybe they've been punished for ambition, right?
Correct.
When you said that, I thought of one of my good friends. He's on the board for the nonprofit that my wife and I run, and we were when we were building out our suite, we had to redo all the conduit and stuff in the ceilings,
Yeah.
all the electrical work and stuff like that. And so we hired this guy. It was a friend of the family. He came in and he redid a lot of the electrical work, and we were pulling all the lights down and pulling all the ceiling tiles down. And I asked Aaron and I think Brian, the electrician's name, was like, "What do we have to do to fix this?" And he said, "We got to do this, 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 and this." And one of the guy's sons said, "Well, isn't there a faster way to do that?" And we were like, "Well, yeah, but it's technically this." And he goes, "Oh, so we have to be a bunch of tryhards." And I was like that's a bad thing? And
Yeah.
the kid Logan, he's like 17, 18 years old at the time. Uh, I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Well, we have to like go above and beyond, I guess." I'm like,
Yes.
"Yes. Why is that a bad thing?" And his dad makes pretty good money. He's a steam fitter for a union outfit, and so he gets a lot of big jobs for like Intel, for TSMC,
Yeah.
multi-million dollar jobs, right? That he's supervising. And I go, "Do you think your dad got where he got because he didn't have ambition? Because he said, that's good enough, because he wasn't a tryhard?" I go,
Yeah.
"Why is being a tryhard a bad thing?" Oh yeah, I guess that's true. It's just like, and I don't know that he ever got punished for his ambition, but I'm like, where does that lack of ambition come from? Probably, like you said, part of it being punished for that ambition, but I wonder,
It's also culturally not cool to try and be above anyone else. I
mm,
grew up with that, right? I'm older Gen Z. And I remember
okay,
seeing that on some of the cartoons, right? Like everybody's valuable, you should listen to everybody. That subtle little propaganda on Saturday morning cartoons.
okay,
It's like, actually, no. Sometimes that guy's an idiot and we should all laugh at him.
yeah,
And it does seem very cold and harsh, but you would be surprised how well the times I was laughed at for being a weak little son of a gun there
huh,
actually forced me to get good at what I did.
yeah, yeah. And I think you look at people like, I think two things happen. If I play bass and
Hmm.
I'm like very baseline adequate at bass guitar. And I look at really good bass players and they do one of two things. They either make me want to quit or they
Right?
make me want to pick up and practice more because I'm like, man, they are so good at what they do. I would love to be as good as them. So two things
Yes.
happen. It either is just like, man, I'm never going to be that good. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but I got to practice if I want to be even
Even,
50% of what
yeah.
they are. And I've done enough blue collar work too, where I've seen electricians, I've seen plumbers, I've seen tile guys that are really, really good at what they do. And
Hmm.
that's there's an art in that. And they
Yes, there
have that
is.
ambition. And some of them are, some trades lend themselves to a little more social isolation and a little more social awkwardness, but they're able to sell themselves through their trade.
Yep.
Right? And you being an engineer, I'm sure there's a level of awkwardness and bluntness and dryness that comes with being an engineer, right? And
You have
so
no idea.
and so developing those social skills, I think, is important. But if you're good enough at your job and you're a good enough engineer,
A lot of it carries itself.
a lot of that carries itself, and people aren't going to care. They're going to be like, "Yeah, he's a little Elon Musk." Like, yeah, he's a
Jeff
weird.
Bezos.
Yeah, they're weird. They're socially awkward, but they're just so smart, and they're so ambitious that it's hard to not admire that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Now here's the other side of it. Can you imagine how much quicker they would have gotten to where they were if they were socially competent?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because this is what it is. Social skills, I wouldn't argue is a thing in and of itself, but it amplifies everything else you do.
Yeah.
So it's very high leverage.
Yeah, and that kind of wraps back around the sales, that
Yeah.
idea of leverage and that idea of being able to communicate a truth or communicate a benefit or communicate a reality to someone. You know, if
Yeah.
I have an idea that I want to do for the gym, and I go to my team and say, "Hey, this is what I want to do. I don't really know what it's going to look like. I don't, da 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 da." That's different than, "Hey, I have this idea for the gym. Here's how I want to execute it. Here's a few blanks that I need help filling in." Right?
You've got
And
that
give it,
certainty already well pinned down.
yeah, I have the certainty pinned down, and I also see that like I don't have everything ironed out. I see there's some blanks or maybe there's some flaws in the plan, but this is the direction I want to go.
That's
Help
the
me
difference
fill in the
between being a
blanks.
wuss versus being a visionary.
Yeah. Yeah,
Kind of
and
a thin line, surprisingly.
oh yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a fine line between being in that same regard foolish and being faithful, right? Or being
Yep.
foolish and being a visionary because you can be foolish and win big. You can also be foolish and crash and burn. Asking that girl out, right?
Hmm.
There's a right way to do it, but there's also a way to overthink it.
Correct.
And there's a difference between asking her out, getting rejected, and kind of feeling a little bit burned, but learning something.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
then,
actually was just talking with this guy who I told you I was talking about the way to use the sledgehammer.
yeah,
He actually just got on his first date not too long ago as a direct result of what I was telling him, right? But then he
yeah,
crashed and burned after that, just wasn't going to pan out. And so I looked at him and said, the idea is I looked at him and said, she's an idiot, right? Because that just gets you into the right mindset of, yeah, there's plenty I can do to, improve myself, increase my chances, right? But at some point, you got to realize I have done everything I know how to do. And if people can't see that, that's their fault.
Mm. Yeah,
A little bit of that just ruthlessness about things.
yeah, yeah. That I'm going to keep going and I'm going to keep trying no matter what. You
I
know,
don't care because it's not my fault that I crashed and burned. And even if it's not my fault that I crashed and burned, I'm still going to try and pick up the pieces and do better.
yeah. Well, there's benefit too, though, in things being your fault. Because
Correct.
then that means you can fix it, right? If you're like, yeah,
Correct.
you know what, I messed up. This is where I went wrong. Then that
To
means you can fix it. And that I
to
think
quote, go ahead.
with a lot of young people, I think that's a problem is they never want to be told that they're wrong and they never want to
Hmm.
be told that they can improve something. But it's like, dude, if you're told you're wrong and you're told you can fix it and you're told that you can improve it, that means you have power. Whereas
I
if
will. I'm
there's
going to give
no
you a
way
little
you
bit
can fix
of.
it and you keep
Hmm.
being wrong, it's like the world is against you, right?
I'm going
And
to
so
push
you're
back.
screwed.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that because the charismatic way of saying this is yes and rather than it's because what a lot of young people will hear about that is that when they offer a complaint to the people who are supposed to be in charge and in authority and they respond like that, it's like, well, you didn't even hear me.
Hmm.
So it seems to me, because I'm a younger guy, I know a lot of younger guys, right? This is just the perception going around.
Yeah,
It's not that we don't want to be corrected, it's that we first want to be given some sort of validation that the people who can correct it are hearing and acknowledging that
Hmm.
this is a problem.
Yeah,
This is actually something that this is kind of why the whole boomer meme became so big. Is because all the Gen Z guys are like, wait a minute, why can't I buy a house?
right. Yeah.
Or why can't I get a girl? And all the boomers are like, well, just go up and ask her. Okay, but when I do that, she turns around and laughs in my face. Well, you didn't
Just
ask her hard enough.
just work harder.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not the problem,
Yeah.
right? And that just kept happening. People were like, okay, well, you're just not even listening.
Yeah.
What has to happen then? And this is what I've seen all the best guys I see do. They're like, yes, I hear you. And let me describe the problem better to you than you
Sure.
understand it,
Yeah.
right? Now, let
Yeah.
me tell you not necessarily just how to fix it, but here's what I did about it. And here's now what you can do about it.
Sure.
Because what you've
Yeah.
done now is solve, I see the problem. Let's solve it together. Oh, I've solved it. Here's how you do it.
Yeah. definitely some truth to that. And I think that sort of pairs well with and maybe there's sort of a parallel concepts there where that pairs well with if something is your fault, at least I think one thing I try to be mindful of is somebody comes to me with a problem. I like asking, well, what have you done about it so far?
Hmm.
Because I want to know, one, I want to know what you've done so I'm not giving you solutions that you've already tried.
Correct.
And two, I want you to feel empowered. I want you to feel like you have some agency rather than me telling you, oh, well, you just got to work harder. Oh, you just need to ask her out and pretending I have the solutions. What have you tried already? Um, and at
Good
least
sales, by the
making,
way.
yeah, and at least making you feel like, yeah, that's good sales. At least making you feel like you have, some agency,
Correct.
rather than just giving you the answer. So there's a subtlety there, I think, that you can push on younger people. I'm 40, so I'm like elder millennial right on the tail
Yep.
end of Gen X. I kind of fall in this weird camp where I feel more like a Gen Xer, but the Gen Xers won't have me because I'm more millennial. But I very much fall in that
Right.
camp of like, I probably beat myself up too much, but I very much fall in that camp of like, it's my fault. I need to fix it. What can I do about it? And I need to make
Hmm.
sure that I've done everything I can do before I go to someone else. And I might do that to a fault, actually.
Yes.
I might work something to death and then I go to somebody and they're like, "Man, you've destroyed this thing." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, I probably should have asked for help like 10 hours ago, but
Well, this is something fun that is in my generation. And part of my coaching is to help guys find one of these groups I'm talking about. And a lot of the other Zoomer guys that I've talked with have seen the same thing. They're like, there's kind of two kinds of Zoomer male. There's either the absolute insanely high agency go-getter, like you don't even see them because they're just solving problems that you don't even know exist, right?
yeah.
And a lot of them will go into influencer positions, X, Twitter, whatever, right? Because they're like, actually, that's super high leverage if I do that right. And the other side is they're just super weak and there's no agency left in them. And there is zero in between. It
Mm,
is one or the other. And so a lot of my coaching helps guys find those high agency people.
yeah. The the coaching that you do, and that kind of poses the question, do you tend to find yourself more coaching you people in your peer group, older people, younger people?
The oldest client I had was early 30s.
Okay.
So I'm
So,
28. So I
okay.
feel you being kind of on that generational
Yeah.
line right there. I call myself Gen Z because I grew up on the internet. My humor is all Gen Z. I'm dating a Gen Z girl. It's like,
Okay.
okay, right?
Yeah. Well, not that I'm grandpa or boomer or anything, but I think you carry yourself very well for being 28.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment.
Very, very articulate. I don't think I had that level of introspection and that level of being able to articulate myself and my vision for my life as well as you do at 28. I think that's cool and that's humbling to be able to interact with somebody like you that's I'm looking at I got your X feed kind of pulled up and meeting new people is easy. To just have that confident of like you're overthinking it, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
40 and I still overthink everything.
yeah,
Being able to articulate that and articulate your coaching and your modality and your vision is awesome.
yep.
Where if millennial, a boomer, a Gen Zer, whoever came to you, what would your pitch be? Your coaching pitch? If you were
Oh,
in an elevator and you had 30 seconds to pitch your coaching practice to somebody.
I wouldn't do anything but ask questions.
Ooh,
Interesting take on that, right?
yeah.
Because I could get it down to one sentence and guide the conversation well enough with questions to be able to do that.
Hmm.
So what would I start with? Was like, well, do you ever feel lonely or do you ever feel isolated? Like there's people that you just can't relate with and tell me about that.
Yeah.
And I just let them tell me what their pain is.
Yeah. That's good. That's good because I think, especially a lot of young men, I think that's probably the truth for them is they do feel isolated. They do feel lonely.
I was
Sometimes
one of
they
them.
sometimes they probably, and I know I've experienced this, you feel it even when you're in a crowded room. You're in a
Oh,
party, you're in a
100%.
room full of people, and you're like, dude, I feel lonely. I feel isolated. You know, part of that's my personality. I have so much social battery, and then eventually I'm like, I just want to sit in a corner and
Yep.
chill. And I genuinely do enjoy watching other people have fun too,
Yeah.
and watching other people interact. And one of my favorite things is if we have an event or we have a party or we have something at the gym. I try to participate, but I almost try to take a step back and watch other people participate because I'm like,
Hmm.
I kind of put this together and I created this space for other people to interact and
Yeah.
have fun and enjoy themselves, and that there's some beauty in that to me. Um, but like you said, I think just asking people those questions, do you ever feel isolated? Do you ever feel alone? I think a lot of Gen Zers are going to say, yeah, and not really know why and not know how to fix it. I think that's why what you're doing, I think, is important. I think it's awesome, and I wish you had uh, a huge following, and I hope you do at some point.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I hope your coaching practice blows up because it's cool.
I am working very hard on making sure that happens.
Yeah, and I love that you're approaching it from a faith-based perspective. I've done enough social work. I've worked in corrections. I've worked in the community where um, it's very much needed. We need a voice that is. We don't need a voice that's necessarily right wing or left wing or whatever, but we need a voice that is breathing truth into young people.
Mhm.
Because there's a thirst for it, there's a hunger for it, and there's a need for it for sure.
Yeah. And I will say it's going to come across as very right wing regardless, just based on the nature of how
Yeah,
things are.
yeah,
The fact that you even say that we're going to speak objective truth into people, it's like, okay, well, that's now a right wing statement,
yeah,
just by
yeah.
definition,
Where's your red hat, Sam?
right? Let me see. I got a red scarf laying around
There you
somewhere. Let me
go.
go grab it real quick,
Yeah.
right?
Well, where can people find you? What your
Well,
social
besides
media
Twitter,
handles,
which, yeah,
website?
I go by at Speechworks on Twitter and variations of that on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook currently.
Okay.
I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I have plenty of slots open and available for that if you are looking for it. So if you're looking to kill your loneliness permanently without any overthinking or any scripts or any just fake it till you make it, bro, I'm the guy for you.
I love that. Sam, I appreciate your time. Anything else you want to throw in there? Any last minute thoughts? Any ideas? Oh, you know what? I thought about this 10 minutes ago. I wanted to say it.
I'm just really hungry at the moment, so
Yeah, we'll go get some food. I
right?
appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours as well. Thanks,
Thanks
sir.
so much, Sam.